Hi, I'm Junae. They said I was just lazy, that I was always tired, always dramatic, always looking for sympathy. Even when I collapsed in front of them, they laughed. But when my sister started stealing the medication that keeps me alive, no one believed me. Not my parents, not the doctors, not even me sometimes, until the day I collapsed, right in front of the judge, during the reading of my grandmother's will. What kind of family lets it go that far? And why did it take me almost dying, again, for the truth to finally come out? The heat in New Orleans has a way of wrapping around you like a damp towel, suffocating and unrelenting. That morning, it felt even heavier. My sheets were damp with sweat, the fan overhead doing little more than moving the air in circles. I lay there for a moment, heart pounding harder than it should after sleep, the skin on my arms tingling. A sour taste filled my mouth. The signs were familiar, too familiar. I sat up slowly, my fingers trembling as I reached for the orange prescription bottle I kept on my nightstand. It felt light, too light. I twisted off the cap. Empty, not a single pill left. I blinked, disbelieving for a second. I had just picked up a full 30-day supply 5 days ago. 60 tablets. Gone. I didn't drop it. I didn't misplace it. I wasn't hallucinating. My gaze slid toward the door, and like clockwork, the faint scent of eucalyptus and vanilla drifted through the hallway. Malis, that overpriced essential oil blend she swore helped her focus. I wasn't a fool. I swung my legs over the bed, the floor cool against my bare feet. My knees wobbled as I stood, but I forced them to steady. I needed answers, and I already knew where to start. I stepped into the hallway, the walls lined with pictures Malis had insisted we hang. Photos of her yoga poses in Bali, her glowing smile in Santa Fe, a snapshot of her next to a health food stand in Austin. None of me. Not one. Our mother's voice drifted from downstairs, something about avocados being on sale. Malis? I called, keeping my voice calm. Her bedroom door was already half open. She leaned against the frame, holding her ridiculous green smoothie with a bendy straw, dressed in seamless athleisure. Her expression was one I'd seen more times than I could count, annoyed amusement. Lose something? She asked, sipping casually. My pills, I said evenly. They're gone. Again. She rolled her eyes. Maybe you forgot you took them. You do that sometimes, right? I stood there, mouth slightly parted. She said it loud enough. I knew she meant for Mom to hear. I also knew Malis had no shame about it. From the kitchen, Mom chimed in, not even bothering to come into view. Honey, you really should be more careful. That stuff's expensive. I clenched the bottle in my fist. It's not about the cost, I said, though I doubted anyone was listening. It's about staying alive. Malis smirked. Dramatic much? Without them, I could collapse. Again, I said. And yet, here you are, she said, with a bright, sugary tone. Standing, talking, walking. Maybe what you need is a little less drama and a little more movement. You took them. Prove it. Her voice was sharp now. Not angry, strategic. Like she knew I wouldn't. Like she knew I couldn't. I turned away, retreating to my room, my heart thudding too loudly in my ears. I grabbed my medication journal, flipping to a fresh page, and wrote, Day 6, no meds, empty bottle. Symptoms starting. Vision blurred. Hands numb. I sat there for a while, just listening. Malis laughed at something downstairs. Mom replied, something about the neighbor's cat. Life moved on for them. For me, everything was paused, pressed under glass. The last time I told Dad about the missing medication, he looked at me like I was wasting his time. You've got to stop making your illness your identity, Junae, he had said. Every time something goes wrong, it's the Addisons. What happened to taking responsibility? That memory settled over me like a weight. I didn't call him this time. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I sat by the window as the sun dipped lower. My skin felt clammy, my thoughts more sluggish. I considered dialing my doctor, again, but I already knew what they'd say. Insurance wouldn't cover another refill, not yet, not unless I ended up in the ER again. I looked at the ceiling, swallowing against the tightness in my throat. I had $42 in my account. The meds cost almost $300 out of pocket. Payday was still a week away. I rested my head against the window pane. If I went to sleep and didn't wake up, would they still say I was lazy? That I brought it on myself? That I imagined it? The street lamp outside flickered on. Somewhere a car door slammed. Malis was laughing again, this time on the phone. I didn't need to know what she was saying. I'd heard it all before. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I didn't leave my room. I lay on top of the covers, the air heavy on my chest, waiting to feel worse, and knowing that I would. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to shut it all out. My last coherent thought hovered right at the edge of consciousness. If I die quietly, will they still call me lazy? I don't remember how I got to the bathroom. My head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I blinked slowly, the harsh bathroom light making my eyes water. The tile beneath me was cool against my cheek, and the floor's grout lines pressed faint marks into my skin. It was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the occasional footstep overhead. I lifted my head an inch and paused, dizzy. My lips were dry, and my mouth tasted like copper and cardboard. There was a tremor in my fingers again, not from nerves. It was the kind of tremble that came from deep inside, where hormones failed and systems started collapsing. I pulled myself upright, using the edge of the sink, my arms wobbling like cooked spaghetti. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me anymore. In the mirror, I looked worse than I felt, and that was saying something. My skin had gone pale, tinged gray around the temples, and there were beads of sweat along my brow despite the cool room. My pupils looked uneven. I knew that wasn't good. The bottle had been empty the day before. I hadn't imagined it. I had triple-checked. But now, even the possibility that I might have miscounted or forgotten taking a dose clung to my mind like a stain. That was the worst part. When someone repeats a lie enough, even you start believing it. I left the bathroom and walked carefully back to my room, each step measured like I was balancing on a wire. I sat down on the edge of the bed and reached for my phone, still plugged in on the nightstand. My fingers hesitated over the call icon before I tapped it. The pharmacy answered on the third ring. "Hi, this is Junae Porter. I need an emergency refill for my Addison's meds. Keystar, 10 millionaires." There was a pause. I could hear typing, then a voice that was polite but clinical. "Ms. Porter, we've already issued 2 emergency fills this year. Your insurance denied additional requests." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Is there anything I can do? I'm not feeling well. I'll pay cash if I have to." The voice hesitated. "Out-of-pocket cost for a 30-day supply is $280. I'm sorry, ma'am." I hung up before she could say anything else. My checking account had $42. I'd just paid for a bus pass and a few groceries the day before. My next paycheck wasn't coming for another 6 days. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, head in my hands. The room seemed too bright and too quiet at once. I opened my medication journal and flipped to the last entry, 5 days ago. I'd marked the refill date. I'd logged each pill taken since. But what if I had forgotten 1, or 2, or 10? I started flipping back. I rechecked every tally, every note. My handwriting was consistent, no signs of panic or confusion. I knew I'd taken them. Then why was my hand moving toward the pen, scratching out the last entry like it was a mistake? Because this is what happens when you're told you're unreliable enough times. Eventually, you become your own jury, and you find yourself guilty. Downstairs, I heard the blender. Melis's morning routine hadn't skipped a beat. Smoothie, phone call, fake laugh. I'd confronted her yesterday. She'd shrugged it off like I was accusing her of stealing my socks, not the very thing keeping my adrenal glands from giving out. And what had Mom said? Be more careful. Like I had left my medication on a park bench or something. I remembered a dinner last year. Our father had grilled steaks. Everyone was seated, laughing about some show I hadn't watched. I'd felt the room spinning and tried to speak, but my voice came out slurred. I passed out cold, face down into mashed potatoes. No one had called an ambulance. No one panicked. Melis had said, "She does this when she doesn't want to help with the dishes." And Dad had laughed. Mom rolled her eyes. When I'd come to, I was lying on the floor. Someone had tossed a throw pillow under my head like I was napping. They didn't think I was sick. They thought I was weak. And worse, they thought I liked it that way. Now, sitting in my bed with a journal full of proof, I didn't feel righteous. I felt pitiful. Because none of it mattered. My documentation didn't matter. My symptoms didn't matter. My voice didn't matter. The system didn't believe me. My family didn't believe me. And now, a part of me didn't either. It was almost 7:30. The morning sun lit the window with a yellow warmth that made my stomach turn. I stood up and wandered out into the hallway. I clung to the banister as I moved downstairs. Malis was already dressed in a tight workout set, her hair slicked back, not a hair out of place. She smelled like grapefruit and ambition. She was sipping something out of a mason jar and texting with one hand. She looked up briefly as I reached the bottom step, but didn't say a word. Then she kissed the air toward Mom and said, "I'll be back around noon. If Junae's still breathing, we can start the will prep then." Mom laughed softly. I stood at the base of the stairs, trying to straighten up, trying to say something, but my voice caught in my throat. No one noticed. The door closed behind Malis with a gentle click. I turned back, climbing each stair slower than the last, and halfway up, I stopped. I sat down right there on the step. My chest ached. My hands were clammy again. They weren't going to help me. They didn't see me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was too dramatic. Maybe I had made my condition worse by obsessing. Maybe I wanted the attention. Maybe it really was my fault. The rain started just after 2 o'clock, slow at first, then heavier, thick drops tapping against the window like fingers trying to get in. I hadn't moved from the stairwell in nearly 30 minutes, and the ache in my back reminded me why people weren't meant to sit on steps for long periods. I pulled myself up carefully, still lightheaded, and made my way to the kitchen to drink water. Real water, not that lemon cucumber detox Malis made such a production about every morning. My phone buzzed against the counter. "Meet me at 4. I found something." It was Ruth. I stared at the message for a moment before replying, "Where?" She answered immediately. "Cafe Margot, same booth." It took longer than it should have to get ready. I sat on the bed longer than I should have, too, just staring at the wall, my chest tight. The rain hadn't let up, and by the time I slipped on a hoodie and stepped outside, the streets were glazed with water. My bus was late, the air inside muggy, and my head throbbed with the rhythm of every pothole the driver didn't bother to avoid. By the time I stepped into the cafe, it was already 4:17. Ruth was waiting in the far corner, at the table we always sat at when we met. The windows fogged at the edges, the air filled with the scent of chicory coffee and something sweet baking in the back. She looked up as I approached, her expression unreadable. "You're pale," she said immediately. "I've been worse," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. Ruth didn't offer a smile. Instead, she reached into her canvas purse and pulled out an envelope. It was old, faded yellow, soft at the edges. She placed it between us on the table. "She wrote this for you," Ruth said quietly, "before she passed." My heart skipped. "Who?" "Your grandmother. She asked me to give it to you when things got hard." I stared at the envelope. My name was written on the front in her handwriting. Not Junie in the stylized cursive she used on birthday cards, but simple, honest block letters. "Junie, only you." I didn't open it right away. I didn't want to rip it. My fingers trembled slightly as I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. It wasn't long, just one page, handwritten in a pen that had started to dry. "My sweet girl, if they ever make you feel invisible, I want you to remember. I saw you. I always saw you. I knew what you carried, even when they laughed. They didn't believe, but I did. You are not weak. You are not a burden. You are my strength made flesh. And if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. So I'll be clear. No one who harms you, physically, emotionally, by theft or betrayal, should ever profit from what I leave behind. I've placed that clause in writing, exactly where it needs to be. If they ever dare, I want this letter to remind you. You are the keeper of your own truth. Stand. Even if they never lift a finger for you, stand anyway. Love, Grandma. The letter crinkled slightly as I lowered it to the table, my hands no longer steady. Ruth watched me carefully. She made it clear in the will. There's a clause. If one beneficiary causes harm to another, they forfeit their share. She really put that in writing? My voice cracked. She did, Ruth replied, nodding. And I have the original copy. The lawyer has a formal one on file, but your mom didn't want anyone else to know about it. I think she hoped it'd never come up. Why are you giving this to me now? Because I know what's happening. You're not the only one Milas has taken pills from. I blinked at her. Wait, what? Ruth sat back, arms crossed. 2 years ago, I left my purse in the guest room. Came back 10 minutes later, and my anti-nausea meds were gone. I didn't report it because I figured it was a mistake. But then she posted a picture later that week holding a bottle that looked an awful lot like mine, calling them her focus supplements. I felt something cold slide down my spine, not fear, but the sharp clarity that comes when everything suddenly connects. She's been doing this for a while, I whispered. And she knows you don't have the money or the support to fight her on it, Ruth said. But I do. And now, so do you. She reached into her bag again and slid a manila folder across the table. Inside was the original will, signed, notarized, and a copy of her incident notes about the pills. Start logging everything, Ruth said. Times, dates, photos if you can. And if you're going to win this, you'll need proof. Emotional damage is hard to quantify, but theft of medication, that's criminal. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle in. Not comfort, just steadiness. The storm outside had slowed to a drizzle. Light filtered through the fogged glass, turning Ruth's silver hair into a soft halo. I looked at her differently now. Not as the relative who always brought the extra potato salad to barbecues, but as the one person who had really seen what I'd been trying to carry alone. My fingers brushed the envelope again. I woke up once, I said softly, and she was standing over my dresser. I thought she was just borrowing lotion or perfume, but the next day, my pills were off count. I told myself I must have remembered wrong. Ruth didn't look surprised. That's what she counts on. Do you think she really believes she's helping me? No, Ruth said without hesitation. I think she believes she deserves more than you, and she's never been told otherwise. We sat in silence after that, the clatter of coffee cups and low music from the speaker above filling the space around us. When I stood to leave, Ruth didn't say goodbye. She simply pressed the folder into my hands and gave me a long look that said everything words couldn't. Outside, the air was thick but cooler. The sidewalk shimmered with puddles, and I pulled my hood up as I walked the 3 blocks to the bus stop. My legs were tired, my heart even more so. By the time I got home, the sky had darkened to a dusty purple. I stood in front of the house for a moment, staring up. A faint light glowed behind Melis's window curtain. Her shadow moved across the glass, pacing. She didn't just take my meds. She took my life, piece by piece. By the time I stepped inside, the sky behind me had turned the color of damp charcoal, heavy with clouds but holding off the next downpour. The streets were slick beneath my sneakers, and the weight of Ruth's words still sat squarely between my shoulder blades. She'd given me the truth, handed it to me in a manila folder, and a handwritten letter that rattled louder than thunder. It wasn't just her support, it was validation. Quiet, certain, and undeniable. The house was quiet in a way that made you suspicious. I slipped past the living room where the TV played to no one. Upstairs, the sound of Melis's voice filtered through the walls, laughter underscored with the faint buzz of her speakerphone. Probably some brand rep or another wellness collab. She'd already posted twice that day about morning affirmations and gut health. I didn't need to hear more. I walked straight to my room and locked the door behind me. The small fan in the corner pushed warm air around. I sank into my chair by the desk and stared at the locked drawer for a long moment. Then, deliberately, I opened it. My medical journal lay right on top, its black leather cover worn soft from years of thumbing through it. I pulled it out, then reached for the stack beneath it. Insurance claim rejections, receipts from emergency refills paid in cash, emails from my doctor's office stating how many pills had been prescribed, and when. I laid them out carefully across the desk, chronologically. Dates, amounts, pharmacy logs, names, times. I knew this would never be enough on its own. My word against hers was a coin toss in this house. But what Ruth had said, get proof, echoed in my mind. My phone buzzed. She's not going to stop. Be careful. Ruth. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Then I opened a browser and searched discreet camera pen delivery same-day New Orleans. There were two options. I picked the one with 4.5 stars and paid the rush fee. It would arrive in 4 hours. While I waited, I made a fresh entry in my journal. I cataloged every symptom: pulse at 102 BPM, tremors in both hands, dry mouth, fatigue, low-grade headache. I circled the word cognitive fog and drew a small lightning bolt beside it. If they weren't going to believe my words, I'd give them footage. I thought about lowering my dose, not in some dramatic act of desperation, but as proof that this body, with this illness, responds to lack of medication the same way every time. And maybe if someone saw it on video, they'd understand that I wasn't playing sick. I was sick, and surviving it every single day. At 7:15 p.m., the package arrived. I signed for it with a hand that barely held the pen steady. The camera looked like a standard ballpoint, but heavier. It came with a USB charger and a small instruction sheet. I spent the next 30 minutes testing it, positioning it in different pockets of my purse, making sure it faced outward. When I was satisfied, I clicked record and left it on while I refilled my water and came back upstairs. Then I erased the footage just to confirm the file saved and played back clearly. That night, I went to the bathroom and looked at the bottle that now held only 5 tablets. I took half a pill, something I wasn't supposed to do, and swallowed it dry. I lay in bed afterward, no fanfare, no hesitation, just me, a notepad, and a controlled experiment. I recorded everything. 10 minutes in, my hands began to shake. At the 30-minute mark, my legs were cramping. My mouth dried up. I licked my lips to keep them from cracking. At the 45-minute mark, I wrote, salt cravings increasing, hands cold, dizzy, heart rate climbing. It wasn't the first time I'd tested the limits of my body, but this time, I wasn't alone. I had evidence. I had context. I had Ruth. And I had that letter. I remembered that parking lot in Baton Rouge 2 years ago after a failed job interview. I'd made it halfway to the bus stop before my legs gave out. I dropped to the ground, my breath gone, arms flailing weakly. People walked past me, unsure of whether I was overdosing or faking or something in between. Malus had driven me there. When she picked me up an hour later, I was still woozy and scared. She posted a clip of me on her story later that night. Just a blurry video of me slumped on the curb, captioned, "My sister, always finding a dramatic moment." I should have said something, but I didn't. The shame buried my voice. But tonight was different. The room spun slightly as I stood to head toward the mirror. My reflection was washed out in the soft light, hair pulled back, eyes dark underneath. I didn't recognize myself, but I knew what she'd survived. I leaned in close, jaw clenched. "They'll call me dramatic. Let them," I whispered. "They won't call me a liar again." By the time Friday evening rolled around, the air inside the house had taken on a nervous stillness, the kind that settled in before a thunderstorm or a fight at a family reunion. The dining room looked like a magazine spread. Malus had clearly been at it all afternoon. Candles flickered from every corner, linen napkins folded like origami birds, and a curated playlist of instrumental jazz hummed from a Bluetooth speaker in the far corner. The table was set for 5, though only 4 chairs would be used. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching my mother fuss over the wine glasses as Malus added a sprig of rosemary to a water pitcher like she was hosting a cooking segment. No one acknowledged me when I walked in. No surprise there. "Smells great," I said, though I hadn't smelled anything but lavender-scented surface spray and roasted ego. Malis looked up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I thought we deserved something nice before the big day. She meant the will reading on Monday, but said it like we were all heading off to summer camp. Dad appeared from the living room, patting his stomach. Smells like success. You've outdone yourself, May. She beamed. Thanks, Daddy. I sat down at the far end of the table, nearest the window. I kept my purse close, the hidden pen camera clipped to the inside flap. It was recording. Always recording now. The salad course was served. Then a roasted chicken Malis insisted had been brined for 24 hours. I could hardly taste it. She dominated the conversation, as usual. She talked about her upcoming sponsorship with a gut health brand, the yoga retreat she was planning in Sedona, how her followers kept asking for more realness, so she'd started journaling online. Dad asked questions, nodding proudly like she'd cured cancer. I didn't speak unless spoken to, and even then, barely. Malis raised her glass at one point. To new beginnings, she said, locking eyes with me. To new truths, I replied quietly, and sipped. There was a beat of awkwardness before the chatter resumed. My mother, bless her silence, just kept cutting her chicken into tiny, nervous pieces. Dessert was tiramisu, Malis's guilt-free version with almond flour and coconut cream. She served each slice herself like she was handing out communion, and then, right before the first bite, she looked over at me with that tight smile. Let's hope you make it through the whole reading this time, sis. No fainting spells at the lawyer's office, okay? Forks paused mid-air. Laughter followed. Not a roar, just that quiet, polished kind people use when they want to look good while being cruel. I placed my fork down carefully. If I collapse this time, I said, it'll be because someone made sure I would. And there will be proof. The room went silent. You could hear the tiny fizz from the Pellegrino bottle on the table. My father cleared his throat. Honey, that's not really necessary. Malis's eyes didn't blink. Her smile faltered, just slightly, then returned, tight and furious. You're so sensitive, Junae, she said sweetly, always taking things the wrong way. I leaned forward, my voice calm. You've taken more than that, and you know it. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Everyone flinched. Mom stood, but I was faster. I walked to the door and opened it. Ruth stood there, holding a covered glass dish. Hi, darling, she said to me, ignoring the rest behind me. Peach cobbler. I made it the old way. None of that almond flour nonsense. I smiled, letting her in. Thanks, Ruth. She walked in, handed me the dessert, then turned to Malis and said with zero inflection, I don't stay for shows. And just like that, she turned and left. The silence she left behind was thicker than the rosemary-scented air. That night, I didn't bother pretending to sleep. I closed my bedroom door, turned on my laptop, and inserted the flash drive Ruth had slipped into my hand as she passed me the cobbler. There was no label, just a video file named simply, Grandma. I hit play. The screen flickered, then settled into a shot of my grandmother sitting on her sun porch, the ceiling fan spinning behind her, Ruth beside her on the wicker love seat. Their voices were low but clear. She's not strong like the others, Grandma said, her hands folded tightly in her lap. But she sees. That girl has eyes for truth. You sure you want that clause in writing? Ruth asked gently. She's not weak, Grandma said. She's surrounded. And one day, when they come for what they think they're owed, I want something in place that protects her, even if I'm not here. Ruth nodded. The camera panned slightly, catching a glimpse of my grandmother's will in her lap, her signature already marked at the bottom of the page. My eyes burned. I stopped the video and sat back, stunned. Proof. Clear. Undeniable. I looked over at my purse. The pen cam had done its job. It had caught Malis's dig at the table, the moment her voice twisted around something venomous, wrapped in charm. It had caught the silence that followed. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the medical journal again. I flipped to a fresh page, wrote down the date, the meal, the quote, the footage timestamp. Then I sat back and looked at it all. Journal, flash drive, video clip, receipts. A storm was coming. But this time, I was ready to let it hit. Let's see if they laugh when the curtain falls. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, the overhead fan spinning in slow loops that matched the rhythm of my thoughts. My body was tired, but my brain had crossed some irreversible line, no longer passive, no longer questioning whether I was right or wrong. I was simply awake, painfully aware of what I had to do. Tomorrow would be the final rehearsal. I would let Malis walk straight into the truth she'd worked so hard to bury. By dawn, the air had thickened. The kind of Louisiana humidity that stuck to your lungs, the kind that warned you a storm was close. I sat up in bed and reached for my morning pill. I didn't take it, not the full dose. I knew exactly what I was doing. I needed my body to show them, needed it to scream where my voice couldn't. I swallowed half, washed it down with a glass of water, and wrote the time in my journal. 6:42 a.m. For the rest of the morning, I took notes every hour. Dizziness began to creep in by 8. My pulse quickened. By 10, I could barely focus enough to text Ruth. I wrote, "Symptoms present. Controlled dosage started." She replied within minutes. "Document everything. Stay sharp." I opened the drawer where I kept my supplies, expecting to find the pen cam right on top, exactly where I left it. It was gone. I froze. My fingers tore through the drawer, checking beneath the files, inside the sleeves of old notebooks, under the taped-down bottom flap. Nothing. The camera was missing. So was my emergency pouch of 3 backup pills. The small zippered fabric case I kept hidden inside my tote. I hadn't touched it in weeks. But now it had vanished. I slammed the drawer shut and stood, heart pounding hard in my chest. Not fear, fury, the kind that rises hot in your stomach and pushes out through your fingertips. I went straight to the kitchen. Malis stood there like she always did on Sunday mornings, barefoot on the tile floor, wearing a silk robe and a facial mask the color of algae. She sipped from a turmeric smoothie and scrolled her phone with one hand. "Funny how you're always around when my meds disappear," I said, my voice flat, sharp. She didn't look up. "Funny how you always get sick when there's attention to be had." I stared at her. She knew what she'd done. She wanted me to react, to yell, scream, make a scene that our parents could chalk up to me being dramatic again. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I turned around, walked back upstairs, and locked my bedroom door behind me. Then I texted Ruth. "It's time." I gathered everything. My journal. The receipts from my out-of-pocket refills. Screenshots of every prescription logged through my patient portal. The video Ruth had given me from the night Grandma dictated her final wishes. And even though the camera pen was gone, I still had my phone's voice memos, at least some record of Malis's twisted little performance at dinner. I placed everything in a thick envelope, scrawled on the front in block letters, "In case I can't speak." I sat at my desk and took stock of the folder. It was real, solid, tangible proof that I hadn't made any of this up, that I hadn't imagined the missing pills, or Malis's sneers, or the dismissive shrugs from my parents. It was all there, and tomorrow it would matter. I looked at the clock, 3:12 p.m. My symptoms had worsened. My balance was off. I felt shaky, but I refused to take the rest of the dose. I wanted it documented, needed it undeniable. By 6, I'd eaten a small bowl of rice, forcing it down through the nausea. I tried to distract myself with TV, but the room felt like it was shrinking. I paced, then stopped pacing, then opened the envelope again to triple-check everything was still inside. Just after 8 p.m., I placed the envelope on the table beside my mirror. I laid the backup flash drive next to it. That's when I saw it, on my nightstand. The pen camera. It was back. The same spot, the same angle. Just there, as if it had never been moved. My hands tightened around its body. I turned it over. The battery light blinked twice. Red. Dead. No way it had recorded anything today. That was the message. She'd taken it, emptied it, and returned it to taunt me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I walked to my desk, grabbed a Post-it, and wrote one line, "Nice try." I stuck it on the camera and placed it back on the nightstand, right where she had returned it. Let her see it. Let her wonder what else I had copied, where else I had backups. She thought she was the only one who could play quiet games, but I'd been learning in silence for a long time. At 10:21 p.m., I brushed my teeth slowly, my movements more sluggish now. My body was pushing back hard. But I didn't care. I had done everything I could. I slipped into bed, not bothering to change the light bulb that flickered twice before steadying. I laid there, one hand resting lightly over my ribs, where my heart thudded like it was working double shifts. The air was still. Downstairs, I heard a soft giggle. Malis on the phone, as usual, probably talking about her Monday outfit or who she'd charm next. I stared at the ceiling, that old fan still spinning above me, tired but relentless. Tomorrow, I whispered, she gets my silence, but not the kind she planned. The courthouse hallway smelled faintly of floor wax and tension. I'd been there 20 minutes already, sitting on the hard wooden bench outside courtroom 2B, palms damp, stomach tight. Ruth sat beside me, her hands folded neatly over her lap. She hadn't said much since we arrived, just offered me her familiar, steady presence. That was enough. Inside, I could hear quiet voices and the occasional shuffle of paper as the courtroom prepared for the reading. We'd been instructed to wait until they called the family in together. That moment came at 10:04 a.m., when the bailiff opened the door and nodded once. We filed in like a procession. The room was smaller than I expected. Dark wood panels, high ceilings, rows of pew-like benches. It felt more like a church than a courtroom. Judge Harmon sat at the front, glasses perched at the tip of her nose, a folder already open before her. Malis entered last, hair in soft waves, a cream blazer pressed to perfection. Her heels clicked like punctuation marks on the polished floor. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. I took my seat 2 rows behind her and our parents, who had angled themselves slightly toward her like she was giving a keynote. I sat alone, but I wasn't empty. I had my envelope. I had my proof. And more than anything, I had nothing left to lose. The judge cleared her throat. We're here to formally review and execute the last will and testament of Margaret Elaine Porter. All grandchildren listed as beneficiaries are present? Ruth nodded. They are, Your Honor. Very well. The will began as expected. Small sums to charities, sentimental items to friends. Then, the bulk of it, the estate, the trust, the home, the investments, was declared to be divided evenly among the 4 grandchildren. Malis, me, and our 2 cousins who were attending via Zoom. Then the judge paused, lifted another document, adjusted her glasses. There is, however, a codicil, dated 9 months before Mrs. Porter's passing. It reads, any heir found to have intentionally jeopardized the health or well-being of another beneficiary shall forfeit their inheritance. Said portion shall be redistributed equally among the remaining parties. The room went still. My breath hitched. Not from surprise, I knew it was coming, but from the realization that it was now public record, real, audible, on file. Malis shifted in her seat. Her smile didn't fade, but it paused, just for a beat. The judge continued. This clause requires evaluation based on submitted evidence or statements. At this time, that was when my body failed me. It didn't happen all at once. It crept in like it always did. First, a sharp throb in my temples, then the fuzziness in my vision, the subtle tremble in my left hand that no one else would notice unless they were looking closely. I tried to sit up straighter, to breathe deeply, but my throat felt thick. I reached for my purse. My fingers fumbled. Then I heard Ruth whisper my name, then louder. Junae? I turned to look at her, or tried to, then the floor tilted. The room turned sideways, then upside down. My purse fell to the floor with a dull thud, scattering its contents. I think I tried to speak, tried to say I'm okay, or it's happening. But no sound came out. Everything narrowed into a pinhole. I collapsed. I could hear it all, even if I couldn't move. The gasps, someone calling for help, Ruth shouting, "She needs her meds, now!" Judge Harmon's voice, firm and cold. "Call paramedics. This is a medical emergency. Everyone remain seated." There was movement, chaotic but controlled, shoes scuffing against linoleum, a hand on my shoulder, another checking my wrist. My vision flickered like an old TV, frames skipping. As the EMTs arrived, Ruth knelt beside me. Her hands were on my bag, gathering what had fallen. I couldn't see her clearly, but I heard the zipper, the rattle of my journal, the sharp click of a flash drive against the tile. "She brought everything," Ruth said, not to me, but to the room. She knew this might happen. She was ready. Someone lifted my head gently and began to check my vitals. Oxygen. Pulse. Vague voices muffled like underwater echoes. Then I heard Melis's voice. Calm. Cool. "She does this, you know. It's a pattern." Judge Harmon's voice cut through. "Ms. Melis, sit down. You are not excused." Melis didn't reply. I felt a needle in my arm. The cool rush of fluid. My body slowly responded, like it had to negotiate its way back. When I finally opened my eyes fully, I was still on the floor, now partially propped up against a medic's knee. Ruth hovered just behind, hand still resting on my shoulder. The judge addressed the court. "We have just received what appears to be physical documentation and digital evidence related to the clause in Mrs. Porter's will." She held up the flash drive. "Ms. Ruth Porter, would you please state for the record what is on this device?" Ruth stepped forward. Her voice was clear. "Recordings made by Junae, including voice and video footage, evidence of stolen medication, of direct admission from Melis Porter." The judge nodded. "We'll play the contents now." The room went silent except for the soft hum of the AV equipment warming up. Then, Melis's voice filled the chamber. "She always passes out. Good thing I kept a few of her pills. She doesn't need them all anyway." No background music, no laughter. Just that voice, flat and factual. You could hear a pin drop. The judge removed her glasses slowly, looking up. "If this is how I fall," I thought to myself, "let it be where the truth stands up." They wheeled me into the hospital on a stretcher. I caught glimpses of fluorescent lights overhead, voices layered like static, Ruth's calm but urgent tone, a nurse calling vitals, the faint beep of monitors syncing to my body. Oxygen tubes found their way to my nose, a cool line of life reconnecting me to the present. When I opened my eyes fully, it was late afternoon. Outside the window, the sun cast long golden slants across the floor, dust caught in the light like suspended memory. I didn't move, just lay still and let my body remember it had made it through again. Ruth sat in the chair beside my bed, a styrofoam cup in one hand, her other resting gently on mine. When she noticed I was awake, she didn't say anything at first, just squeezed my fingers once, firm, steady. "You're lucky," a nurse said, glancing at the monitor. "Any longer, and it would have been a different conversation." I nodded. Words still felt heavy on my tongue. After the nurse stepped out, Ruth leaned in. "You didn't have to speak today," she whispered. "Yet you said it all without saying a word." I blinked slowly, grateful and sore all over. The kind of ache that reminded you of everything you'd carried in silence, and everything that finally hit the ground. By 4:30, they had me sitting up. The doctor insisted on keeping me overnight for observation, but I was stable. My vitals were returning to baseline, my mind sharper with each passing hour. That's when a nurse wheeled in a tablet. "The judge would like to resume proceedings. She said only if you feel well enough." I met Ruth's eyes, then nodded. "I'm ready." The screen flickered, and there she was, Judge Harmon, in the same courtroom, her expression as composed as ever. The room behind her held the same seats, the same wood-paneled walls. Melis sat off to the side, her posture rigid, eyes rimmed red, not from grief, I suspected, but humiliation. "We're reconvening to finalize the reading and ruling per the late Mrs. Porter's instructions," Judge Harmon said. "Evidence has been submitted regarding Clause C, subsection 4, pertaining to the disqualification of a beneficiary found to have endangered another." She paused, then continued, her voice precise and firm. "The court acknowledges the authenticity of the submitted video and physical documents. Ms. Melis Porter was heard on tape admitting to withholding medication prescribed to Ms. Junae Porter. The court rules this action as intentional endangerment." My heart pounded, not out of fear this time, but quiet confirmation. Every part of me that had once flinched at the word dramatic now stood taller. "Therefore," the judge went on, "Ms. Melis Porter is hereby disqualified from any portion of the inheritance under the explicit instructions of the deceased." Her intended share will be redistributed equally among the remaining heirs. A hush fell over the room. No murmurs. No objections. Malis shifted, opening her mouth slightly. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to." Judge Harmon didn't flinch. "You meant for her not to be believed. That, Ms. Porter, is harm enough." Ruth watched the screen like someone witnessing the settling of centuries. As if on cue, Malis's phone buzzed on the bench beside her. She picked it up quickly, glanced at it, then locked the screen without answering. I didn't need to see the message to know what it said. Brand deals don't survive scandal. Justice wasn't just legal, it was social. And in Malis's world, silence wasn't golden. It was fatal. A court assistant approached the judge, whispering something off-screen. Then the judge looked directly at the camera, addressing me. "Ms. Junae Porter," she said, "do you have anything you'd like to say on the record?" I straightened. My body still trembled slightly, but my voice was mine. "Yes, Your Honor, I do." The court waited. Even Malis turned her head toward the screen. "I don't want her to suffer," I said. "I don't want revenge. I just want it on the record that I almost didn't survive, not because of my illness, but because people I loved thought it was more convenient to dismiss me than to listen. A sick girl can tell the truth, and she deserves to be believed." There were no gasps, no claps, just quiet. The kind that settles after a storm when the wind has finally run out of things to destroy. Judge Harmon nodded. "Thank you." The video feed ended. The nurse reached over to turn off the tablet, then paused. "That was powerful." I smiled faintly. It was overdue. 2 hours later, Ruth wheeled me out of the hospital's back entrance to avoid cameras. But even from that alleyway, I saw the flash, heard the faint clatter of shutters from the front. Malis wouldn't be allowed out that way. She would have to face the press, the public, the questions. I didn't look back. As we turned the corner, Ruth asked, "You okay?" I nodded. I didn't win because she lost. She glanced at me. "No?" I won because I stood back up. The air in my new apartment was still, not heavy, not electric, just still. I had never noticed the value of that kind of silence before. The kind that doesn't come after a fight or before one, but the kind that simply exists, like a room choosing to breathe with you instead of against you. It had been exactly 32 days since the ruling. I counted, not out of obsession, but out of quiet pride. Every one of those days, I had taken my medication on time. Every dose accounted for, every alarm set. The small safe I bought sat on the bookshelf, tucked between a stack of dog-eared neurology texts and a secondhand poetry collection I hadn't touched since college. I opened it each morning, took what I needed, logged the time. There was no guessing, no missing pills, no whispered doubts in the hallway. I was healing. Slowly, unevenly, but on my own terms. At 7:05 a.m., I silenced the alarm and poured myself coffee. The kind I liked, dark, plain, no unsolicited advice stirred in. I sat at the table by the window, watching the light stretch its way across the wood floor. The door buzzed at 8 o'clock sharp. Ruth. She walked in with her usual paper bag and a smile that never rushed anyone. She handed me a small bouquet, sunflowers, of course, and a framed photo wrapped in newspaper. "She always said you'd be the one to carry your own name with honor," Ruth said softly, setting the photo on the table. It was a picture of her and Grandma, taken in the sunroom. They looked like they were mid-laugh, probably over some private joke that now belonged to time. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough. Instead, I just stared at it, then nodded once. We didn't mention Malis. We didn't need to. The silence between us said more than any headline ever could. After Ruth left, I opened my laptop and clicked on the file I'd recorded earlier that week. A voice message, not for social media, not for court, but for the small community center I now volunteered at every Wednesday afternoon. The support group there didn't ask questions with raised eyebrows. They didn't measure sickness in wheelchairs or visible bruises. They understood the quiet battles. I hit send. "Hi, my name is Junae. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a speaker. I'm just someone who's had to learn the hard way that surviving isn't always the hardest part. Sometimes it's convincing others that you deserve to, that your pain is real, even if they can't see it, that you matter, even if you're not loud. So, if you're tired of explaining yourself, you're not alone. If you're tired of being called dramatic, come sit next to me. I know what that feels like. I closed the laptop gently, as if not to disturb the words that had finally been allowed to live. That afternoon, Ruth called again. She lost all of them, she said. Every brand, even the one that stuck by her through the initial scandal. I leaned back on the couch. She'll recover, I said. She might, Ruth answered. But she hasn't reached out, not even once. I wasn't surprised. She already said enough, I told her. Even so, later that evening, I found myself pulling out the old flash drive and placing it in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. I wasn't holding on to it for vengeance. I was holding on to it like someone might a scar, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder of how far they'd come. At sunset, I stepped out onto the balcony with a glass of water. The wind was soft, the city below murmuring through open windows and the hum of early night traffic. A boy on a bike laughed as he raced past the corner. Somewhere, a dog barked, then quieted. I took a breath, one that didn't hitch in fear or frustration, one that belonged to me. There were still bruises, not visible ones, but ones I could feel when I leaned a certain way or heard a familiar phrase said in a certain tone. Some part of me would always flinch, but that part no longer drove the rest of me. I used to think freedom would feel like shouting, like storming out or winning a fight. Turns out, it feels more like a clean apartment, a cup of coffee made the way you like it, and nobody second-guessing how many pills are in your drawer. They used to call me dramatic, now they just call me gone. Sometimes the deepest wounds come not from strangers, but from the people we share a last name with. This story isn't just about Junae or her illness, it's about how easily a truth can be dismissed when it doesn't look dramatic enough, until it becomes undeniable. So here's the question. Have you ever been made to feel like your pain wasn't valid because it wasn't loud? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful family stories that reveal what's often left unsaid behind closed doors.